Sony just shut down Bluepoint Studios. And bro, I gotta tell you, my first reaction was mostly just confusion because I couldn't understand why. Bluepoint is an extremely talented studio. You just acquired these guys a few years ago and now you're shutting them down. Why? Or maybe perhaps there was something that I wasn't considering at the time. Maybe there's something that we're missing. Is there ever a time when closing a studio is the responsible thing to do? Because when I asked myself that, it kind of revealed my biases, things that I hadn't considered at the time. But what I want is not for us to default to outrage and automatically treat closures as failures, but to actually have the courage to ask ourselves, what if sometimes keeping something alive is actually the bigger risk? Bluepoint wasn't random. Like I said before, they had prestige, they had credibility, they had talent, and they had polish. And Sony's brand is actually built on single-player driven games. So to me, this kind of feels contradictory. If Sony is all about single-player driven games, then why the hell would you want to close a studio that's well known for making and preserving those single-player driven franchises and games that you're so all about? But this is actually the most critical and crucial part, whereby we need to take a step back and consider something very important. We do not know the numbers behind this decision, and that is an extremely important point. We don't know how much Bluepoint's next project was actually projected to make, or how long it would take until they actually made money. We don't know whether the sales forecast justified that timeline, or whether their next project was actually aligned with Sony's long-term strategies. I mean, we don't even know if Bluepoint's remakes, once you factored in full studio costs, were actually generating strong margins. There is so much we do not know. And the weird thing is, a remake can sell well, but if it takes years of payroll and massive overheads to produce, then the profit window may not necessarily be as large as we'd like to assume. And if a company believes that the industry is tightening in terms of longer development cycles, way more expensive AAA budgets, and slower growth, that ultimately will change the way you consider or evaluate risk. And here's another important distinction I'd like to make here, analysts. Bluepoint wasn't a core franchise creator like your Naughty Dog, your Infamous. No, not Infamous. Your Insomniac, your Santa Monica's. No. Bluepoint specialized in remakes. That's valuable, but it's also different. A tentpole original IP like God of War or Last of Us can anchor an entire generation. A remake only refreshes the legacy. So, in other words, if Sony is narrowing focus, it doesn't automatically mean that they're abandoning what made them special in the first place. They're abandoning single-player games to begin with. It could simply mean that they're prioritizing and consolidating around their core tentpole franchises and studios. And the other thing that I feel that we are kind of missing or mistaking is that we think that talent automatically makes you sustainable. That talent means that you are untouchable. There's no way that you can actually be shut down because you're actually just talented. However, in corporate world, talent does not automatically make you sustainable inside a corporate structure. Because we've seen examples from the industry before whereby this actually did happen. I mean, look at Kojima and Konami. Nobody argues that Kojima did not have talent. But at some point, his development model and Konami's future strategic plans came to a head. It wasn't about skill or talent. It was simply about strategic alignment. For all we know, Bluepoint could have simply been in a similar position, not necessarily lacking talent or ability, but simply misaligned with where Sony actually wants to go. And I want you to actually think about this, analyst. If you are running a company the size of Sony, the questions that you are most likely to be concerned about is how fast is money being spent? How long before projects pay off? How many multi-year bets can we carry at once? And these questions are not emotional questions. These are survival-driven questions. Questions that pertain to the future of your company. And questions such as these are what can possibly drive you into making a good strategic decision, which may actually be painted or seen from another lens or POV as completely wrong, incompetent, and just way out of left field. I mean, think about this, analysts. If continuing with Bluepoint Studios meant committing to another long and expensive cycle, and the forecasts simply didn't justify it, then would not closing the studio not necessarily be panic, but financial discipline? Now, please, analysts, don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that Sony made a perfect business decision. And I'm not saying that this actually guarantees success. What I'm saying is simply this. Before we default to outrage and finger pointing and blame pointing, we should at least have the humility to admit the things that we do not know. Because sometimes what looks to you or me as the biggest blunder in gaming history could actually be simply business consolidation in another lens. A decision that would probably go on to make the company millions in the future, or losses. Who could know? But we won't actually know whether this was actually the right business decision for Sony to make until we see Sony's next moves.